¿Encontrado con trozos gelatinosos en la playa? ¿Qué son? ¿Cómo llegarán ahí? ¿Y serán peligrosos? Efectivamente corresponden al resto de medusa, más específicamente de la umbrela de la medusa. La parte gelatinosa del cuerpo de la medusa, que se asemeja a un paraguas, se le denomina umbrela con una L. Hay literatura que utiliza dos L, pero la más aceptada y por ende la más utilizada es con una. Las medusas no tienen buena capacidad natatoria, no nadan bien, por ende pueden desplazarse, pero si se enfrentan contra una corriente marina, esta las arrastra. Por lo general se encuentran mar adentro, pero si la corriente las arrastra hacia la orilla, por acción del oleaje, varan. Por lo general llegan a la orilla vivas y enteras, pero cuando varan, mueren. Al morir se despigmentan, o sea pierden su color, por eso quedan translúcidas. Y se empiezan a descomponer, por eso empiezan a quedar trocitos. Todo este proceso se aumenta con la acción del oleaje y es aún peor cuando hay marejadas. Igual son procesos naturales, ocurren comúnmente, a veces en grandes cantidades. Ahora, ¿estos restos son peligrosos? Parte 2.
This was shot at 1,000 frames a second, which is 40 times slower. And when I was playing this back, I noticed something really weird, something that I've never seen before. And that is that the iris in my eye, which is the colour part, is actually really loose. It wobbles around as though it's jelly. So I was sort of making small adjustments with my eye, twitching it around, looking at different stuff. And every time my eye stopped, the iris sort of carried on and then sort of wobbled around until it stopped as well.
Exactly 1 year ago today, I started my TikTok channel with this lesson. Humans evolved about 200,000 years ago in Africa. We are all Africans, and the very first humans were black. This is because dark skin contains extra melanin, which blocks out excess UV light from the sun, which would otherwise destroy the folate in our blood and cause us to have babies with horrible spinal deformities. We got dark skin so we could have healthy babies. Then my ancestors moved way up north where there isn't a lot of direct sunlight. And if you don't have enough UV light, you're not going to produce enough vitamin D and you're going to end up with horrible bone deformities. So we got light skin so we could have strong bones. Every defining racial characteristic you can think of has an evolutionary history like this. And that's important because when I was a kid, I was taught that race is a very real thing, but we shouldn't talk about it. But the fact is that the opposite is true. Race is completely made up, but we should absolutely be talking about it. And the point of this whole channel is, as a scientist, when I say we're all a family, I freaking mean it.
Ada kau. Terkejut betul lah. Sebenarnya kalau awak terkejut, kalau awak macam titik sikit, of course kita tahu secara logiknya bola tu takkan keluar daripada skrin dan kena kat kepala kita. But we still flinch. Kita still macam macam tu. Why? Itulah tindakan refleks. And itu adalah tindakan yang otak kita buat tanpa perlukan pemikiran kita untuk menyelamatkan kita daripada bahaya. So thank you, brain.
When I was younger, I used to be one of those assholes who just thought that, like, lying was funny. And most of it I regret, but this one I'm actually pretty proud of. I convinced one of my friends while we were in high school that the reason why male-bodied people had an Adam's apple was because it was like a spare tire for your testicles, and that when we were quadrupeds, if you somehow managed to lose a nut, it would just kind of like migrate down on its own, but that since we became bipedal, the distance became too much, and so now, like, technically you could have it done through surgery, but no one really did it because that surgery had a really high mortality rate, and she believed me for months. And now, this girl is about to graduate college with a degree in biology.
Once again, I'm telling people to leave wildlife alone. That is Glaucus atlanticus, also known as the blue sea dragon. It's an endangered species of sea slug. It has a really nasty sting if you touch it, and it floats around on top of the water using currents to move it. Just doing its thing, so leave it alone.
Me etiquetaron considerablemente en ese video preguntando que qué era esa cosa. El animal que aparece en ese video y también en este son nemertinos. Los nemertinos son generalmente gusanos acuáticos. Se encuentran principalmente en el mar, pero también hay especies de agua dulce, así como especies terrestres y parásitas. Pero en general son inofensivos. Eso que saca es su probóscide, en este caso ramificado, en el caso del otro video también, la probóscide es algo muy similar a una trompita, algo muy similar a lo que tienen las mariposas. Así que no, esa cosa no es Venom, sí. Los nemertinos usan su probóscide para cazar su alimento. Sí, son carnívoros. Se alimentan de algunos animales que puedan encontrar en el sitio donde viven. Así que si un día te encuentras uno en la playa, todo tranqui, no es Venom.
When a whale dies and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, it can create a unique and complicated ecosystem that can last decades or even over a century. If it sinks in shallow waters, scavengers can take care of it pretty quickly. But when they fall to really deep depths, they can create an oasis of life in what could otherwise be called an underwater desert. The entire whale fall ecosystem typically happens in 4 stages. Stage 1 is called the mobile scavenger phase. Things like deep-sea sharks and hagfish feed on the soft tissues of the whale carcass. And this stage is relatively short, it lasts about 2 years. And stage 2 is called the enrichment opportunist phase. Smaller creatures like worms colonize the bones and surrounding sediments and finish up any organic material left over from the mobile scavengers. This stage can last from months to 4.5 years. Stage 3 is called the sulfuric stage, where colonies of bacteria form a mat on the bones and feed on the fats inside them. It's actually pretty similar to ecosystems that form around hydrothermic vents on the ocean floor. And this stage can last between 50 and 100 years. The 4th stage is a bit more speculative and it's called the reef stage. Basically, the skeleton forms a semi-permanent structure just like a reef. And suspension feeders can latch onto the skeleton and catch whatever floats by. And what's really crazy is in 2014, a team of researchers from Plymouth University found evidence of some of the same stages on a late Jurassic ichthyosaur find. They found teeth mark on the bones, which is evidence of the mobile scavenger phase. And they also found 5-pointed bite marks on the bones, characteristic of sea urchins found in the enrichment opportunist phase.
This is one of my prized possessions in my biology classroom, and let me show you why. If you've been through a biology class, I'm sure you've made a monohybrid Punnett square. They look something like this. You also may have worked with a dihybrid Punnett square that looks like this. This is a student's quint hybrid Punnett square, which means there are 5 genotypes within this Punnett square. You can see on the left-hand side here where there are 5 different alleles that are being accounted for, which means there's 32 combinations on the side and 32 combinations on the top, and a total of over 1,000 different combinations between these 2 heterozygous parents. This Punnett square obviously took a lot of time, and a student made this for me a couple years ago, so I had it laminated. And it's honestly one of my prized possessions in my biology class. To that student, if you remember doing this, I still appreciate that you made this for me, and I still keep this and show this off in my classes today.